Hello and welcome to the Metagame discussion with L.C. This is our second collab video. In this video, we're going to be discussing different things about the metagame in Triangle Strategy, as well as discussing other things that relate to the game and its mechanics. So, L.C., if you want to take it over from here with the questions, you can jump right in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me on. And yeah, I think this should be a pretty good collab session as well. So we got a couple questions lined up here. So this is going to be a bit kind of like a Q&A, kind of like a host interview kind of thing. So I'm going to ask the questions and then Coffee's going to kind of dive into it. And I'll kind of provide some insight as well. So we have a couple topics here, about 8 questions, and we'll kind of just dive into it. So to start with, we have what defines a metagame? And what are considered the best team builds? Coffee, you want to kick us off with that?
Sure. So, for the metagame, I would say that generally, like the best team builds rely on shutdown. Some of them rely on mitigation, like all the death ball stuff relies on mitigation. So you just use ramparts, and it's just so good at reducing damage that it kind of acts as shutdown because it makes the enemy's actions irrelevant. Because when you're dealing with the hard mode enemies, they deal a ton of damage, so anything that disables them or prevents them from dealing damage or mitigates that damage tends to be like the best. Like if we look at Quahog strats, what does it do? It stops everyone. It's just like you just don't do things, or you just have all of your units burst through all of their 4 and 5 TP weapon skills, kill all the enemies, reverse space time, and then you've killed them and then reversed everyone, and you just keep doing that until you win. Or is like stop time strats, and then just like chip away at enemies over time. Like everything that seems to be like the best seems to revolve around shutdown or mitigation. So what do you think as far as like what the best strategies are?
Yeah, I definitely think you hit it on the head right there. I think the other thing when it comes to like hard mode and stuff like that is in most cases it becomes a battle of attrition, right? Like you aren't going to be running up to these people and hitting them twice and they're dead, right? It's so different from normal mode. When you get to New Game Plus and hard mode, it's just a completely different ballpark naturally, right? So a lot of it comes down to a war of attrition. So a lot of it comes down to making sure that your team has a lot of TP. So TP batteries become infinitely more important. I think Medina, a lot of people call me Medina simp, but I think that's pretty much, characters that can allow you to just kind of be fully juiced up at any time. Her and Julio, take your pick, depending on your playstyle. So characters that are going to allow you to fully utilize your character's abilities at all times, right? They're going to keep you at around 3 to 4 TP because you need every advantage you can get when you're in hard mode, because some of these characters really start hitting like a Mack truck and you need to be able to kind of whittle them down as quickly as possible. And when you need to do damage, you need to be able to do like a lot of damage, right? So it's Quarantine, Frederica, stuff like that. When somebody needs to hit, they need to really, really hit, stuff like that. Outside of that, exactly what you said, just being able to kind of stop them in their tracks is huge, right? So characters like Jens, Huet, they become invaluable in hard mode. Anything that's going to stop their progression of them moving towards you, or anything that's going to just gimp them, becomes invaluable. So I agree with that as well.
Yeah, and a shutdown enemy is basically dead, right? Like if you paralyze a dude, he's basically dead for 2 turns. Or if you Fury, 4 enemies with Eridor, they'll hit him, but he's not going to get hurt.
Yep, absolutely. And in characters like Milo, Power of Love, or even Heartstealer, that can be the make or break, between an entire match. Just having that one turn where you had 4 enemies, just, kind of, or even 5 enemies if you can get it off, just kind of, in the win for one match. That can be all you need, in order to turn the tables, or spring traps or anything like that, or steel traps if you're a Rudolph fan. Anything that's gonna stop their progression towards you is invaluable. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. So I think, and then as far as like the best team builds, I think pretty much the characters that we outline, right? Like characters like Huet, Eridor, nukes like Quarantine and Frederica, and then Lionel. If you need to do damage plus temp, stuff like that. There's characters that just, they excel much more in hard mode. And I want to be clear, hard mode and normal mode are such different things. Normal mode, pretty much every character can get their stuff off. You know what I mean? Like they don't need, you don't really need to be putting
Yeah, they can just attack something and kill it. Just with
exactly.
basic attacks even.
The thinking cap doesn't need to be on too much, except for like maybe some of the later chapters. Like, got to be a little careful. But without this game having permadeath, you know what I mean? You're kind of free to play a little loose, fast and loose with it, right? All right, and then moving on, we have AoE damage. We did talk about shutdown just a bit there, so I don't think we need to rehash that. But AoE damage. So AoE damage, for anybody that's not necessarily familiar with that jargon, is area of effect damage. So this means doing damage to a wide spread of enemies all at once. And there's a couple characters that fit this build. Coffee, you want to dive into that?
Yeah, so AoE damage is honestly insane. One of the things I have a hard time dealing with is when people tell me like single target damage units are really good. Some of them are, like Archibald can be good. He's like one of the ones that comes to mind. He does have some AoE, but like we're talking units that can hit a ton of things. I was doing like a fresh save deathless run, and I'm like it's the bridge fight level or whatever, where you're fighting Erica and Thalas, and I opened the match with like a crit. I use critical blow on Roland. He hits 5 targets, guaranteed crit, and then Frederica hits those same 5 targets with Pillar of Flames and puts like all of them at like 20% health as soon as the match starts. Like AoE is ridiculous, and like Glacial Moon, Sunfall, High Jump, Flash of Steel, Gelid Barrage, Gaia's Roar. All of these abilities are like so powerful. Like just the ability to hit multiple things scales your damage. Like one of the main reasons why people are obsessed with Decimal is because he can just hit so many random things. So I think AoE damage is substantially better than single target, and it's not even close. Like if a unit can hit multiple things consistently for good damage, it just outclasses other units. Like Anna, if Anna couldn't throw stones and deal relevant damage, I would say she's probably like B+ tier on New Game Plus, but because she can throw stones, she's now like a mage, and she also gets damage boost off of what is it? Surprise attack? Or no, not surprise attack.
Back attack, right?
Yeah, back attack damage up. She can back attack damage up with fires, like the elemental AoE stones. It's ridiculous. So she can like crit stone things. So I think AoE damage is king in this game, except for like a handful of maps where there's like split, enemies are kind of split apart. But aside from those like handful of maps, it's just so good.
Yeah.
That's really all I have to say about it.
And I feel like, a lot of the characters that are on the field, they, like, some of the really powerful top tier ones, let's use Quarantine, right, for an example. He doesn't have to pick. Like, he can always do AoE damage with, like, Glacial Moon, Ice Burst, or anything like that, but he also has ridiculous, Frosty Feathers. So, like, you can always switch between them, you know what I mean? So I feel like some of the characters that are at the top of the hill is that you don't really have to make that choice. Like, him and Frederica, they can always switch between them, you know what I mean? If you need that really just, like, real, like, jackhammer, you need to put this character down, they have that. But the AoE damage is excellent, right? And you're talking about having so many enemies on the field that you want to try and whittle them down as concurrently as possible. So characters like, I love Decimal. I read a thread last night when I was going to bed about Decimal, and people were like, I just, I don't like the coin toss. I'm like, but when he works, it's good. You know what I mean? He does so much damage, and that's pretty much, it's like I mentioned before, it's a battle of attrition. So him doing so much damage, even if it is every other turn or something like that, that ends up being worth it, in the long term. So if you even just look at the roster, a character that excels in like single target damage, right? That'd be like Groma, right? She's pretty much 1-to-1. Like she has 1 or 2 attacks that actually like hit multiple people. They don't do that much damage, right? So she's probably considered more of a 1-to-1 attacker. And there's, well, outside of the other issue with Groma, you probably don't want her or Archibald, or even Izana is probably a better comparison. You don't want, even though she has really, really great single target attack, lightning is ridiculous in this game. It's just you would never want her over a Frederica or Quarantine, just because not having access to that AoE damage. She has win, but it's so, like, in comparison to the other AoEs available in this game, it's pretty underwhelming. I think
Win's kind of bad.
It's pretty bad, right? And then you talk about characters that have, weapon skills like Gaia's Roar with Giovanna, excuse me, not Power Love, but Lionel's weapon skill, like Golden Opportunity. These attacks do so much damage, and it just becomes invaluable in hard mode. Like it literally just upends the entire game for you. Single target stuff is fine, but characters that can do both, I think, are great. That's why characters like Roland will always be viable, because he has options. If you want to save it for 4 dragons, that's fine. If you want to do Flash of Steel, that's fine. You want to do Rush, that's fine. Characters like Maxwell as well. You know, he has run
Yep.
through, he has high jump, he also has triple thrust. You know, characters that don't have to choose, they have both options. Those are the ones that I think really, really excel, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was just thinking that too, like when you were mentioning the like Frederica and Corentin. The other thing too with like Frederica and Corentin, Frederica can set oil on fire and shut enemies down, and Corentin can ice ball and silence. So like, and he can use a shield of ice, which is ridiculous. This, even on like a fresh save, like I'm in the middle game right now on my like deathless playthrough, and Corentin's shield of ice has actually been extremely helpful for pushing, and you get it pretty early, like you get it mid game, so they bring more to the table, like than just damage, like AOE damage and single target. And honestly, I think Frederica, I might put her in A+, but I kind of feel like she is S tier, like just with using oil jugs. Like if you use oil jugs, she's absolutely S tier.
Yeah, if you have more than one large oil jug, she immediately goes S tier. I
Yeah.
think if you have those, you know what I mean, just like with Anna with the stones, it just completely raises her value even higher. It just makes her just extremely powerful. So I think that's, yeah, I agree with that for sure.
And her base damage is just nutty. Like she just hits so hard all the time because of the clear weather thing, which is like 95% of maps. It's
Yep.
clear weather, so you can't go wrong.
So she always, pretty much always has that permanent passive on most stages that you don't have to do anything for. So, you know, it's
Right.
just like she's incredibly powerful. And I still personally prefer TP on knockout as opposed to shield TP on ice. That's just me though. But she's just, you know, she's going to always do the damage. Like these characters, and you take a look at, you know, some of the archers in this game, you know, Rudolph and Archibald. Like Archibald, he's pretty much designed for being single target, right? His thing is like he's a sniper, right? Generally one target. He does have some stuff that does hit multi-hitting, but it's kind of underwhelming. You know, his weapon skill requires 2 turns. I don't really like that kind of thing. And then Rudolph's stuff does hit multiple targets, but it's like literally just like paper planes. Like in hard mode, it's just not going to be the difference in most cases between a life or a death unless you just get really, really lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's going to be shooting. The other thing too is he's going to be shooting against physical defense. Most physical enemies that he's going to be attacking that are going to be near your team are going to have higher physical defense than magic,
Yep.
making mages inherently better at killing them.
Yep. It just doesn't end up being worth it, you know what I mean? So like for like Rudolph, you just would want to wait for straight shot, you know, or just use that TP on steel trap. It's just, you know. And then you have characters like Evlora that, again, they don't have to choose, you know what I mean? They can use risky maneuver if you just need to shut somebody out, you know, if you just need to shut somebody down. Or you just wait for Bloody Cross. You know, characters that don't have to choose, I think that definitely makes them top tier.
Yeah, and even with Avlora, like you still have no escape, which can hit 3 targets.
Hmm.
And when she gets stat boosted, if those are crits, if she back crits dudes with stat boost with low unit count, she can no escape for huge damage for 2 TP, and it also reduces their evasion and movement. So like aside from Bloody Cross, which is insane as well, she can always risky maneuver for single target, no escape for small AOE, or Bloody Cross for huge AOE. So she's pretty absurd.
Yeah. And it just, you know, if you take a look at those characters as opposed to like just take a look at like Trish and Travis, like they don't have AoE attacks. Like he has an AoE weapon skill, but like he doesn't have like something in normal use cases that's going to be like crowd control. He has to be like right in somebody's face. And then same thing with Trish. Like Trish, if you're using oil jugs, I think she becomes way better because fire arrow. But if you aren't, you know, by herself, it's definitely underwhelming.
Yeah, there is. I mean, Trish, I feel like is a new game plus plus unit,
Hmm.
and I don't think this is intentional. But when she spams items with Act Again, she basically gets AOE. But that's like, I mean, it's not as good as Anna's, but she can kind of move in and move out, which is kind of nice. But it's definitely at least A tier. But her actual kit definitely doesn't have any AOE at all.
Yeah.
And like Bullseye is like the dumbest skill. I still don't understand why it exists. It's fairly accurate.
Yeah, I was like,
And,
well, it's just like, yeah, it can be super accurate, but then you're doing like no damage. You know what I mean? Like that's like such a specific use case scenario that I was just like, this sucks, man.
it should ignore armor,
Yeah,
and then it would be good.
yeah.
Now we're talking. A little
it's
bit more
just-
damage, ignore armor. Because we're in its current form, it's like, okay,
Mhm.
why would I waste TP on that? Just throw a stone, same effect. Never
Yeah,
misses.
I agree. I agree. All right, so we pretty much answered the first two pretty excellently. So moving on to the third question: should the metagame change, and what would be good changes? So we've kind of explained what the metagame, is as it exists currently for normal hard mode as it exists in its current iteration. What changes do you think would be good, or what changes do you kind of see coming down the pike, Coffee?
Like I don't think they're unfortunately going to ever update this game aside from bug fixes.
Hmm.
Uh, but if I were able to do updates for this game, I would definitely like slightly nerf. I would nerf Quahog and Medina, um, and I would buff all the characters that tend to be underperforming, like Grama. I'd probably give Trish and Travis buffs. Hasabara, I would change Be Brave. This is all I would do for Hasabara. Change Be Brave to have a range of 1 to 2. And now she still doesn't heal herself, but now it has a huge range, and that makes her a little bit more interesting. And like that would probably be enough, because that's a pretty huge, like that would be the largest heal in the game aside from Medina's heal. But that would make her competitive because then she could kind of heal large formations and also kind of heal at range. Um, but for nerfs, like Quahog needs reworked. Medina's TP thing needs to it should make it so it can only trigger once. So if you double items, you can only give 1 TP total. So you can still hit someone with a large thing, but it can only give TP on the first item used. I think that's what they should change the wording and the functionality to. So she can't double items herself and infinite double items for the entire game. Um,
Yeah.
she even then she would still be S tier, but she would just be like actually no, she'd go from God to S tier. I would think, because it still restores 5 TP. Um,
I
yeah,
agree.
I would do that.
I agree. I definitely agree. So let me kind of reword this question a bit. Based off the current metagame that we have, knowing that there's not going to be any updates or anything like that, do you see any natural evolution or people discovering things? I think it's safe to say that you're definitely at the forefront of the community when it comes to like just really diving deep into the game and just kind of discovering, use cases, utilities, underrated stuff, things that make characters a bit better. Like the Piccoletta thing, I think was pretty good. I was figuring out that hey, if you use her with stones, she can actually just shred entire like units or maps. So things like that. Do you think that discoveries like that will become more prominent and will kind of upend a bit of the metagame?
Potentially, we can never really predict the future, and there's always some based on what we know about the game now. I would say there's potentially a few combos out there we're just unaware of. I don't know that there's like a ton though. I don't want to say the game is completely solved because there are some really weird things you can do, like to manipulate enemy AI. So, for example, one thing I've noticed lately is if I have a unit, like let's say I have Eridor, and there is an enemy on the other side of Eridor, and there is an enemy mage 2 tiles away from him with full TP. The enemy mage almost every time without fail will walk up to Eridor, not furied, whack him with the book to trigger a follow-up attack. So there's like a lot of weird things, like just AI manipulation. Like if a mage can follow up attack, even if he's at full TP, he'll almost always go for it, even if it's terrible and makes no sense. They target all enemies will target units with mitigation because they can't perceive it. They can't like see that a unit has mitigation on it, like ramparts. So like you could just like stick your weakest unit, um, and just have it next to Flanagan ramparts, and everything will attack it. You put shielding stance on it, like whichever has the lowest defenses, and you could do this with a decoy. This is something that I thought of just now. Decoys have really bad defensive stats. If you had Flanagan in a forward position with a decoy and he's shielding stance the decoy, they would just continually attack the decoy, and even if it dies, it doesn't matter because it's a decoy. But if you made it extremely tanky, it would be literally 0 risk. And like the only problem is magic will still hit Flanagan because he has lower magic defense, but there's definitely some things out there for sure. Um, I think we found most of the broken things. I want to say maybe there's like a handful, maybe like 2 or 3 left. But I think we like all the Quahog stuff, all the Medina stuff, um, all the Flanagan stuff. I think people like wrote Flanagan off, but I only even found out he was good from just doing the unit guides where I'm just like testing things because I'm like, what does Rampart do? Because people are like, oh, it decreases damage, so they're probably thinking like 20, 30%, which is more reasonable, but it's 50, which is crazy for 3 turns. So, just testing things kind of revealed a unit strength. Um, I've been hearing people say that like height +5 on decimal is really good. I've tried it and I've also damage tested it. It's out damaged by Corinton and Frederica because a single Sunfall, if it hits 5+ enemies with like turn accelerator, is more reliable and more consistent. And this is Frederica than height +5 because the positioning can be weird. It depends on where the enemies are positioned in relation to decimal. And even when you get it off all the time, the damage is like okay. And he just needs so much battery. But Current and Glacial Moon spamming definitely out damages it for sure. And then for other weird units, like I think we know most of the Time Child stuff. If people keep coming up with random things, you know, it's whatever. He already breaks the game in at least like 3 ways. So if they come up with a 4th or a 5th, I don't really think that's too exciting. I'd be interested to see some other things. I could see like AI manipulation becoming part of the metagame. So that's what I think overall, though. Just like AI manipulation, maybe some hidden builds.
Yeah, I definitely concur with that. I think that this game, with the way that the internet kind of flows nowadays, this game got broken down and dissected incredibly quick. Like just being in the Discord subreddit, stuff like that, like just seeing people just discover things. Like I had people like literally like day 2, like understand like, oh, this character is like actually insane. Like Quahog, like this character is nuts. And I was like, I don't know, like the game hasn't been out long enough, for you to make that deduction, but they were right. You know what I mean? Like I think some of these people with some of these strategy RPG backgrounds, it's really easy, to see what's inherently powerful and what's just busted. So I think that this game got broken down really quick, but I still think there are things to discover, especially with Quahog. I still don't think we've seen most of the stuff that he can actually do. I think he can actually like completely break the game even further than he already has. But I think as far as like what's strong, is going to stay strong. These characters that are strong, they ain't going anywhere. I think that there might be a little bit of a shuffle with player preference with some of the like medium tier characters. Like I saw a tier list the other day that had Narv in like S tier, and I was like, how? But
What?
he hadn't played hard mode. I think I was like,
Yeah.
how did you? I was like, how did that happen? You know what I mean? But I was reading the thread on Reddit, and he had some pretty good points. But I was like, I still don't, in normal mode, the game is so different. I was like, yeah, you could probably get that off. You know what I mean? Like, you could probably, yeah, sure. But like,
if you're playing on normal mode, though, all the hard mode S tiers become better. Like,
yeah,
Frederica might be able to one-shot groups of enemies with
she
Sunfall.
can. She can.
So, like, it's not even... If Narv is S tier, then Frederica is God plus in that instance. If she can just one-shot groups of enemies...
And you don't even want to talk about...
You could Raging Beast her, Double Magic Amulet, Normal Mode, New Game Plus. You could probably be one-shotting enemies.
Yeah.
Like, straight up.
Bosses. They can do like 3/4 like bosses per encounter. Yeah, I don't know. But I think that, yeah, I think the metagame is pretty much... I like the answer that you had there. So, next question we have here is, what are some things that you think should be nerfed and buffed? So, I did do a project on this a while ago. And I went through the whole cast. And surprisingly, actually, at least like 50% of them, I was like completely fine with where they are now. More than 50, like maybe 65%. But I think the ones that need help really, really need help. You want to dive into that for us, Coffee?
Yeah, I'll just like go over some of the units and like, I'll try to do like 5. I don't want to do everyone because like some of the units need it worse than others. I do think Narv needs a buff. I think he just needs some kind of TP management and maybe. Honestly, what I would do, I would completely rework him to be a wind mage. Give us pushing things back with wind magic. Give us single target wind nuke. Give us, like here's another thing that it could be cool. Like, what if you could create a tornado as his weapon skill, and it like slowly moves one tile, like every turn, and like hits things in a path slowly. Like, wouldn't that be sick? Like stuff like that would not be hard to do. But I would make Narv a wind mage. I would make Azana a lightning mage. Azana's like generally good, but I would still give her a fleshed out kit because like Frederica and Corinton have spells, they have like not generic magic. Like Frederica's stuff is very specific fire magic, Corinton very specific ice magic. They should have the elements expanded on the units that are just kind of like the worst mages. Giovanna needs a lot. I don't know how I'd rework her, but she needs reworked. She's not really. There's some not Giovanna, Grama. Grama, I always get this confused. They're both G's and they're both like kind of like bright hair type of thing. So, and they're both like 1600 units, or no, one's not, but they're harder unlocks. Gromma, I would definitely give her some buffs, rework her. Decimal is probably fine. I think that's it, really. Oh yeah, and then Travis and Trish. Travis, I think they should reduce the damage of Heavy Smash and just make it, you just do it, just one turn, no charge, because it's dumb. I would keep the charge if it did something cool, like if it delayed enemies or wasted their turn or knocked them back. That would be cool. That would justify it being a charge. And then for Trish, I would make Bullseye do something better. Maybe just make it armor ignoring damage. Get rid of all the stealing mechanics on both of them. It's completely useless. Like, the items you steal are worth almost nothing. You're better off grinding mental mock battles if you're trying to grind. It just doesn't help you. And by the time you get them, most of your economy's fine anyways. Get them in Chapter 15. But yeah, Travis, Trish, Gromma, rework Narv as a wind mage, rework Azana as a lightning mage, maybe like rework Hasabara. Hasabara, I think they should get rid of pushback and cleave and give her like fury and like some damage mitigation and make her a support unit. I think that would be better. And make it so Be Brave either hits bigger range or heals herself as well. But she doesn't need damage. Like, when she hits things, it doesn't do much anyways. It's like okay, but I would rather her be a support healer on a horse, like a Valkyrie from like Fire Emblem or something. I think that would be a better use case. What do you think about like units and everything for balance?
Yeah, I agree with pretty much all those points that you have for sure. Like, just kind of looking through the roster, I still think it's really quite hilarious that like the base characters that you get, you know, like the non unlocks, like they're just insane. Just looking at them, Benedict, Frederica, Roland, Gila, Anna, Eridor, Huette, like these characters that come out the box are like insane. I think a few characters like Rudolph was on my chopping block. I just think he needs something. He needs numerous things. I think he needs, I don't know, dude. I said that make something a lower TP, like Slumber Shot. Make something like 1 TP, but make it not 2 turns. Like right now, Slumber Shot is 2 turns, but the man's accuracy is dreadful. Like Grace's accuracy, maybe just a tick. Not saying make it Archibald level, but make it Huette level maybe. Because it just can't. You cannot have a character on the field that you can't, you know, fielding a whole slot that you can't rely to actually hit things consistently. I think it's just craziness. Hasabara, I definitely agree with the Be Brave and just kind of give her some type of actual avenue to go down, because her actual class is here Curious, you know, like mounted Curious or something like that, but she's only okay at curing, and not curing yourself is a huge issue, because that means now you need 2 people to do the job of 1 person. That's not good. Narv, I agree with that changes. Either give him some type of TP replenishment, like conditional TP, or just like make him a dedicated mage. I understand the jack of all trades stuff, and a lot of people really hang their hat on the whole extending your range. Like, that's one thing I see a lot, is that, you know, he has such good range. I'm like, but what does that matter?
He doesn't. No, he doesn't actually, because like if you, he goes from 0 to 4 to 0 to 5 range, right?
Mm-hmm.
But both Sunfall and Glacial Moon have a range of 0 to 6, so that's already further, and they can hit up to 2 squares out, so that's a range of 8.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have better range, and then I think Pillars hits 5. I could be wrong.
I'm like, I've never felt that, you know. It's never been like a make or break for me, like at any point where it's like, oh, that one range really like it clutched it out for me. Never, you know what I mean? I've never felt like that. I just think he needs a complete reworking, make him a dedicated something. But this whole jack of all trade things doesn't work. I would say take away Sanctuary and give him conditional TP recovery, because I can count on one hand, maybe like 3 times I've ever actually used him to heal. It's good to do in a clutch, but because you have like large HP range pellets, that can actually be a better situation. You know, you're not wasting TP in order to do it. It's just who else do we have? Travis and Trish, they need to be completely upended. I don't care what you do with them. Like you said, get rid of the still stuff. It's garbage. And give them stuff that's gonna actually work for them. And I think just give Roma some HP. I actually like playing Groma now. Like, since I've been doing my hard mode New Game Plus, I actually enjoy playing with her. But it's like, you know, it's just too much of a liability. Just give her like.
I don't like her movement or her fury. Like, her movement is just like really bad. Like, yes, she can run between enemies, but her Fury range is less than Eridor's, and Eridor can sprint himself to give himself 5 move,
Hmm.
and then he can move 5 and Fury up to 2 tiles away. So he effectively has better Fury range than Gromma.
Oh, way better,
Um,
I think. Way
yeah,
better. Yeah. And I just think, once she's in, we talked about this in the last one, once she's in, she's in. She has a hard time getting out. She
yeah,
cannot move in and out like a lot of these other characters like Maxwell, Anna, Milo. She just, either give her some type of movement option or something like that, or you're gonna have to pair her with Benedict so she can keep getting the movement buff, like because she just can't, do what she needs to do. So HP, do something with her Fury range for sure. And I think that's it. Giovanna, I think just needs more time. I think Giovanna needs a bit more time to kind of get fleshed out with the proper game plan. I think a lot of us have kind of set the foundation for that with like Quarantine, Jello Barrage, stuff like that. But I think there's going to be other combinations that crop up. It would be nice if you had some type of like geomancy thing or some type of conditional where she could terraform. That'd be cool, but that might break her, honestly, if I'm being honest with you. So yeah, give her a way to use Ivy Beam more. I think Ivy Beam is one of her best attacks because it has an immobilize potential.
yeah.
Yeah.
They should work on Flatlands, which is essentially grass/earth, but for some reason it doesn't. So it's only like one thing they could easily do is give her like 1 or 2 aura abilities where it's like Gelid Barrage now works on these new tiles, or whatever Flaming Blaze or whatever the hell the other spell's called works on these tiles. But overall, like on New Game Plus Plus, she can throw her own ice stones and run around getting TP and then use Gelid Barrage as needed, and she's fine.
Yeah.
And then for Narv, I feel like they missed an opportunity. Like he should just be a wind mage. Like I can think of a few things that would make wind interesting. One would be like a wind current that affects the map, kind of like Tempest, except you set a direction, and what it does is it increases your archer's damage in the direction of the wind current, and then decreases enemy like whatever decreases archer's damage against it, like stupid things like that, and also increases your movement because there's wind at your back by 1, and then decreases movement against it by 1, like stuff like that. Or
Oh yeah.
even if it just worked in like 2 lanes or 3 lanes, like
Hmm.
little things like that would be very interesting. Because then you could do like wind strats where you like blow your team to the front line,
Yeah, I like
create a
that.
bunch of wind funnels and shit.
I like that. I like that a lot. Just the thing with Narv is just like literally just give me a reason to use him. It's just
Yeah,
like I just can't. Anytime I look at that character, dude. Remember I was doing my stream and he literally just died, and I just didn't feel anything. I was like, damn, that's crazy. But like it's just like to me, it's like almost like an empty character slot because he just doesn't. He doesn't bring enough to the table consistently. And the fact that he has all the downsides of a mage, but he just
right.
doesn't have the ridiculousness of Frederico or Quarantine or even Izana. Honestly, I think I would rather have, because with Izana, it's just a matter of time. You know what I mean? You're gonna get the TP. You're gonna be able to drop that huge thunderbolt on somebody. And with Narv, in order to get that same, you gotta kind of augment him. You gotta give him at least 1 magic amulet in order to be on the same level as Izana. But it's just, I don't know, dude. I just don't like him.
Well, the other thing too, like right now, fully upgraded Narv, 55 magic stack. And then if I go over to Frederica, she has 68. That's with 2 magic bracelets. Without the magic bracelets, 62. So 55 versus 62. That's a significant
That
base
is
damage
significant.
plus the sun damage. Like and like the other thing too is like Piccoletta spamming items literally out damages Narv, and it's not even funny. She's just, like if you look at Piccoletta's stats, she's got like 6 move, like 480 health, like 75 evasion, 3 jump, like really high physical and magic defense, and she can make decoys. Like she's basically just exactly everything Narv wants to be, but with items.
Yeah.
So
In fact,
it's just unfortunate.
it doesn't require any TP. She can do that every single round.
Yeah,
Every
yeah,
single
yeah.
round, she could throw
She can
stuff.
go anywhere.
Yeah.
She can go anywhere she wants to. And you also can switch her 6 move to 5 move and 4 jump. So she can be extremely climby. 4 jump is really absurd for opening flanks.
Yeah.
And if you want to get even more absurd, you can throw like Bird of Prey on her and give her 5 jump, or I think it upgraded to gives her 6. And then she can just climb anything. So she's like a little siege weapon catapult thing. Just kind of flings stones at dudes.
Yeah. No, I agree. I definitely agree. So yeah, he's just not my guy. You know what I mean? I was really excited when I first got him, but I think he's one of the characters that needs a rework the worst. What would you do with the Zana?
Azana, I would make her a lightning mage. So what I
Hmm.
would do with Narv and Azana, I would make Narv have all these cool, unique wind spells that actually do something. You could make it so like you can push enemies away. You could make like a tornado as his weapon skill, and it like sucks enemies into it and damages them, stuff like that. Azana, I would just make her all lightning, single target lightning spell with paralyze. That's like one of her basic attacks. She could have like a chain lightning that just like chains to enemies that are standing next to each other, regardless of the tile they're on.
Hmm.
She could have like a passive or something that every time you hit, that she could have like rain magic that's more controllable. I think the current problem is it sucks. Like she should be able to douse things and then act again. That would be sick, but it only hits for like a few tiles. Like throws down like a 3 tile row of water or something, and then act again. It costs like 1 TP or something, and then she could hit that combo with water. I think that would be, but have that as part of her kit because her current problem is the board effects. Frankly, suck. Rain can be good if you connect the puddles, but it's so much setup. It's not even really worth it. It's honestly annoying to do. I've tried it and it's really annoying to do. It's possible, but it's not. It's just not fun to set up.
Hmm.
Because what you do is you summon rain and then you connect all the puddles. You have Anna throw ice, melt it. You have Medina double items, throw ice, melt it, connect it all, make like a massive like lake of ice puddles, and then you can throw ice on your own feet, so you're not in puddles anymore, and then just nuke every enemy that runs in and just get like AOE. Um, but there needs to be more interesting stuff with lightning for sure.
Hmm.
Uh,
I
there
think
could like, sorry, what were you gonna say?
no, go ahead. I was
Uh,
gonna say that I think because they knew that it was so insane, like damage wise as well as a potential paralysis, that they wanted to try and keep. So those two characters that have lightning based attacks, they don't have TP regeneration. I think they try to do that to try and keep it somewhat in check, right?
Potentially, but they could have lightning abilities that don't paralyze too.
Hmm.
They could always have, stuff. They could have stuff that just like debuffs because that's kind of what they like. Both Narv and Izana can reduce enemy magic defense when they hit with magic damage. So like they kind of had this idea of reducing armor. But I think if there were like active abilities, like hit a bunch of units with a significant debuff, that would be interesting, or make them take extra damage. Or whenever an enemy takes lightning damage, they lose like 2 or 3 turn order, like stuff like that, like debuffs that like combos. Like I think that would be more interesting,
Yeah, I
like
agree.
mechanically.
I think that definitely would open up a bit more avenues as far as playstyle. I agree with that. Okay. So next question that we have here is specialist versus generalist, and I feel like we've kind of dove into this a bit already.
Yeah, yeah. You can
What are some bullet points that you have about that coffee?
So specialists are generally units that just do one thing. Generalists are units that do a few things, and they tend to do a few things well, whereas specialists tend to do a few specific things extremely well. This game, honestly, after looking at most of these characters, even characters that you wouldn't expect to be generalists are basically generalists. Like Frederica and Corinton are two of the best generalists in the game, which might sound confusing, but they're both shutdown damage units, and then Corinton is also utility because he can put, invincibility on units and ice wall, which is a mixture of shutdown and utility. Um, but I think originally what I'd thought was like, most of the units are kind of like a lot of the units are specialists, but honestly, most units are generalists in this game. Um, like I can't think of too many units who just do one thing. Like Decimal comes to mind. Like all he does is damage. That's it. He's a barrel. He's a damage barrel. That's all he does. Uh, you could argue all Quahog does is break the game, but arguably he's a generalist because he can do a lot of things.
Hmm.
Um, and even like Piccoletta, like she spams damage and can tank with decoys and evasion. So a lot of the units can do quite a few things, which is good. Some of the healers can only really heal though, like Gila and Cordelia. They can only really heal. They can't really like break out and start attacking. I mean, they can, but it's not going to do much. Like
If
just
you
get a few 13 damage staff whacks in. So
if you want to die to counter hit, sure.
yeah, dude, that happened to me on one of my not to one of my units. Svarog flanked, like I was doing like a deathless run like on the fresh save with Svarog or whatever,
Hmm.
like the mission where you have to beat whatever that what's that Russian dude that with like the hat? You know what I'm talking about? He has like a he has
Cichris.
like a what's that?
Cichris.
Yes, yeah, Sycris. You have to beat you have to kill Sycris or whatever.
I'm on that
And
stage right now. The one where you have to.
sorry.
Yeah, I'm on that stage right now.
Yeah, Svarog like pushed up away from all of my team and started attacking a blind. He was a blinded elite blade, and he kept getting counter hit for 50. And the dude killed himself on him over 5 turns. I'm like, what the hell does this guy do? Like and it's guaranteed 50 damage. It cannot miss.
Yeah.
But then the actual elite blade was missing on him, so
Oh
just
my
a random
god.
stupid thing that happened. Um, but yeah, I would say this game is mostly like generalists.
Hmm.
And there's like a few specialists, and strangely, like most of the units have some flexibility, except for like healers, but they're always good. So I don't know really a lot to say about that.
Yeah, I definitely concur with that. I think that they did a pretty decent job with giving you versatility in this game. Like some characters, you can change them for their utility. Like just take a character like Rudolph, he can do damage. He can also put traps down. There's only a few characters that really only excel in one lane. Like Jens, he kind of excels in. I mean, he has both. He has the ladders, but he's pure utility, right? He's pure utility. That man is not going to be doing any damage out there. Another character that comes to mind as far as just like one utility is kind of Archibald. He does have sticky shot, but literally like he should be attacking every single turn. That's where he excels at. So yeah, no, I definitely think you hit it on the head there. So moving on, we have if new units were to be added, who would you want and why?
Okay. Probably what's the one Roselle dude's name? Jerome.
Jerome. Yep. I
Yeah,
think
because
that's
he would be an interesting unit because he has a spear, which means he hits 2 targets passively. He also has tempt, so he would kind of be like a damage shutdown, which would be fun because Huette's nice to run. So I think he would be a fun unit. I think X Harm would be good. He would kind of be a similar role, except he'd be on a horse, so maybe we get like 7 move, some good single target spike, maybe like some AOE, some tempt. I think Time Child's mom. She's actually more balanced than him, which makes no sense. Like she's an enemy boss, but her abilities are like less powerful. I guess he's a child prodigy. Um, but I think she would be an interesting unit, like because she actually can freeze things in like a small radius, so it's actually more balanced and less like I'm just gonna break the level, let's go type
yeah.
of situation. I think she would be a good unit. Svarog could be interesting depending on what they put on him. Um, I know a lot of people are obsessed with Dragon for whatever reason. I don't understand it. I still don't understand it. It's like he's a kind of cool character, I guess, but he's also like a dude who's like drunk and overly ambitious,
Yeah, I
and
agree.
then happens to discover something. But yeah, I think those ones come to mind for sure.
Yeah, and I think the only one I would honestly add would be Rufus. But I was thinking about this is with his names being Hero's Bane, what if he had like the abilities of like people he's killed, right? Like what if he had like 4 slots and they were like different base things of like the Banes of people he had already killed? I think that would be pretty cool. That would be a good way
Yeah,
to differentiate him from somebody like Travis, because that was my main concern is that he does have his kid is pretty good actually. But like it's another guy walking around with a club. You know what I mean? Like
true.
we really need to try and spice that up. But yeah, I like all those that you said there for sure. Um, I can't think of too many other units honestly. Like I think that this game, the units you have they're really cool and they're really unique. You know what I mean? Like they give you 30 characters and all 30 of them can be fielded. That's really rare. Like I just got done playing Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, and I'm on
Yeah,
Radiant Dawn now, and the amount of characters in that game that are just like flat out not viable, it really gave me like a new appreciation for triangle strategy. I was like, man, that's crazy. I went from a game where you could actually like, and I played Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn before, but it's like, it was just like, man, they've come a long way as far as like balancing and stuff like that. So I agree.
yeah.
Agreed with that. And the next question we have here is thoughts on a possible future sequel. What are you thinking about that, Coffee?
So I don't know. I guess if they did a sequel, it'd probably have to take place somewhere else because if you look at the continent they're on, they're landlocked, so they're surrounded by other countries. So this idea that this is like an issue I have with the story where it's like there's only one source of salt and it's one country. It's like okay, but this is this is three of the countries out of however many on this continent. There's other continents too, so there's just clouds over land. It'd be one thing if they were surrounded by water and is the only continent, but there's clearly other people living around them, and there's kind of just like this. It's almost like a meme. Like you did all the endings, right?
Yeah.
Like you did like the Frederica.
Yep.
Spoiler, but they in the Frederica ending. This is for people who haven't, and maybe they don't want this spoiled. In the Frederica ending, you like go to this bridge where they're like, "Oh, nobody crosses this bridge. Nobody goes here," and it's like, why don't they? Wouldn't there be like, resources everywhere, like down there? Like, why would you just not go there? It's so stupid. But they're just like, nobody travels to that crazy place. So there's just like all this land around them, but we're just kind of led to believe that everything is just here. It's just these three countries, and that's it. And oh yeah, this is kind of a tangent, but one thing that I always wondered is how did they invade Glenbrook with no one noticing?
Yeah, I thought about that. I was like, well, you have, these, well, they don't really make, both houses are to the west, right? You have Falk's domain and you have, House Wolford are off to the west, and those are air quotes the main protectors. And then you have useless House Tellior that is supposed to be, it's gonna be to the west. They're in the east, and the useless House Tellior is probably supposed to be the one that should have seen a gigantic army, like going through their whole domain, to be able to invade, right? Like that's just crazy.
They would still like even if you had you would still have your own soldiers like stationed in forts and stuff, assuming that like they would anticipate. It's crazy how an entire army was able to take a castle that has walls and a moat and a river by storm in a short period of time and not be noticed by anyone. That's just in the Middle Ages. It's like, and they also have hawks and like carrier birds that like deliver messages. It's
I was like, that was one thing that you kind of need a suspension of disbelief for that. I was like, they just literally just showed up there like overnight, and that's whatever.
We just moved thousands of soldiers and nobody noticed. No one felt the ground shaking.
Yeah, I was like,
from miles away from all the crazy siege weapons and everything that would require to lay waste to a castle.
Yeah. And speaking of Frederica's ending, you know what would be cool is that if they went to Centralia, that's what they call it, and there was already people there. You know what I mean? Well, there was already people there, and then
why wouldn't there be though?
Yeah,
there should be.
And then they had like this kind of like back and forth, or there's some type of conflict because hey, you can't just be coming over here, or maybe there's I don't know. They could introduce a whole new race of people, or maybe I don't know, maybe there's dragons or something down there. That's a good jumping off point, and you kind of can still expand on that same world. So I like that as well.
Yeah, they can just remove the clouds on some of the other countries nearby, and then like that's basically your sequel.
Yep.
And then you can just make it about whatever. But one of the things that I like, another point that I was like, kind of like thinking about for the story, it's like, why does Gustadolf attack Glenbrook?
They made it seem like he was just waiting for an opportunity. That's kind of how they like made it seem like he's just an opportunist and he was gonna inevitably do it. It just seemed like this was a good time. This was a good provocation, and I think with him finding, spoiler alert for anybody that hasn't been through the story, with Dragon finding the salt, he just found that was his moment to capitalize. Right? He's like, all right, there's salt there. There's probably gonna be more salt there. So if I invade Glenbrook and just like catch him off guard, which was essentially what he did. Collect all the salt, I can essentially contest Hyzant, so he just essentially saw his opportunity and just didn't waste any time. So that's kind of the reasoning that I have for it. What do you think?
I think he's an idiot. Because what I would do if I were him is I would just ally myself with Glenbrook and then split the salt, because what happens after he invades and seizes Glenbrook? Is his army able to take Hyzant by itself?
No. And
and who do they need to take Hyzant?
Yeah, and it was like
they need the player, and they need you.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
man.
like they don't have the means to wage war against Hyzant. So them taking Glenbrook, who are people who get along with them anyways, was stupid. It was a massive miscalculation by Gustadolf. It's one of the things I don't understand about the plot at all. Where it's like, yes, he can take the salt for himself, but why would you attack the closest country, the country that is more like you than any other country in the world? Why would you attack them? That'd be like the United States invading Canada. It's like they're very similar to us. That'd be really stupid. Like, why would you do that?
Oh, I think it just really comes down to just like overreaching ambition. You know what I mean? I think he probably, since they saw Iron War, they kind of made it seem like everything was kind of a little tenuous, with all three regions. And so he was just like, looking for an opportunity. And he was like, okay, this is the perfect opportunity. Was it a mistake? Yeah, for sure. But sometimes, fortune favors the bold. Some of the endings, it works out for him. So, I don't think it was a great tactical move, but I understand the reasoning behind it for sure.
I think they could have made it more like they could have explained it better because like if they made it more like the Blitzkrieg during World War II, where the technological advances of the German army allowed them to just like push through countries and just take them and at the rates that were like unheard of. I think if they would have had some kind of like air blimps or something, because that would make sense, right? Like dropping bombs from an air blimp. That's reasonable. You could easily take a castle and drop soldiers down, stuff like that. I think if they did something like that, and then made it that they had this technological advantage, and that's how they're able to take Glenbrook, I think that would justify it better instead of just like they just show up overnight like foot soldiers on horses and no one notices. Like that's not like even once they get into Glenbrook, there's still like some buffer zone before they get to the castle, right? People would notice, the army would notice. Taking a castle is difficult too. Um, yeah, but these are just some random tangents about Gustadolf, but
No, I agree. I agree. Okay. And then thoughts on difficulty of the game: hard mode, new game plus, and new game plus plus. So you want to break down the difficulties for us and essentially why we call it new game plus plus?
Yeah, so hard mode is just basic hard mode, fresh save. You start level 1, go all the way up to I think level 36, maybe 33, and then new game plus starts at level 36, and then eventually hit level 50, and then new game plus plus everything's level 50. So the main changes are that you become more powerful, especially after new game plus plus. You get absurd abilities. You have access to every unit. You get a bunch of crazy team comps. Certain things like decoy on Piccoletta is insane on hard mode, like fresh save. It actually hits for good damage and can tank like 3+ hits. But then on new game plus plus, it tends to die in 1 to 2 hits. So there's like little things like that. Poison falls off. Goes from dealing 10% to capping at 30. So if an enemy has 500 health, they would just cap at 30 instead of hitting them for 50. But overall, I would say for the difficulty of the game, fresh save blind, knowing nothing about the game, is the hardest. New Game Plus, level 1, is the hardest map, probably in general. And then once you get everyone leveled up and you understand what you need to do, it's not bad. New Game Plus is like moderately difficult, and then New Game Plus Plus is actually the easiest, I think. Because you just have you know exactly what everything does. You've played the maps a few times. It's more of like a player knowledge thing. So like theoretically, if I were to take a new player and just throw them into New Game Plus Plus blind, they would just get destroyed constantly because they don't know how the mechanics work. But because of player knowledge and like map knowledge, I think it gets easier as it goes.
I agree. And so I did my first playthrough on normal. Normal's pretty straightforward, especially in a game that's deathless. It's mean that isn't death permadeath. It's pretty like forgiving, honestly. Like the game expects you to lose a few units. You know what I mean? I didn't start losing units until like maybe the last 3 or 4 chapters, just because I just got caught off guard. Like Claris came through and threw that money bag at somebody and killed him in one shot, and I was like, wow, okay. So it's entirely, huh?
It's a heavy bag.
Yeah, it definitely wants to do it. I was like, I couldn't stop laughing because I was like, dude, he just did that. Like, I think he killed Cyrano or something like that. I was like, wow, that's crazy. I didn't know you could do that. But yeah, the game's pretty forgiving all in all. New Game Plus, so the way that they handle difficulty scaling in this game, I don't like it. I'm on record. I'm kind of vocal. I don't like the way they do it because they reduce the amount of damage you do and they greatly increase the amount of damage that the enemy does, which is fine because like when Coffee said, you're at level 50. You've been through the game once or twice and stuff like that. So they need to do something to try and offset that, right? So this is their way. In Fire Emblem and other games, they reduce the amount of experience you get. But in this game, since everything carries over in New Game Plus, you're already at level 50, so that's not really, it doesn't matter. Experience is irrelevant. So they had to find some type of way to mitigate that. So this is what they chose. And it worked for this game. Don't get me wrong. It does work. You know what I mean? I'm just not a super fan of it. If they could do another way of doing hard mode, I would probably take that. But hard mode's actually pretty fun, though. You know what I mean? Like, I've been doing the streams and stuff like that. It's pretty fun, because you have pretty much your entire team maxed out. You know what's going on the field. You know what you need to do. But the enemy still comes up with tactics that they can still catch you off guard. You know what I mean? I don't care how many times you've been through the game. Just some of the units, like Trish comes to mind. Like, Trish is ridiculous. And New Game Hard Mode Plus, like, she just becomes like God. And then it's like, why is this character so good? I'd actually rather fight Evlora than Trish because she just has incredible range, incredible damage. I was like, what is going on? But yeah, it's fun though, and I like that it is there for the people that want the challenge, right?
Yeah.
And okay, and final question here: would you want a very hard mode?
Yes.
But what would you want out of a very hard mode?
I mean, it seems like the devs don't want to do too much more on the game, but if they were to do a very hard mode, it could even just be like you deal half damage, like similar to how hard mode reduces damage, I think by like 30% or something. Just like something like that. And then it would force you to, like, basically just by making things stricter and harder, it would force you to run more like min-maxed builds. But I'd also want balance changes too, because even if they reduce the damage you deal and scale enemy damage, like mitigation builds will just continue to work. So that's like one of the big problems. What I would love, honestly, is like better AI, or even just put more enemies on the map, like just like how they did Maddening in Three Houses. Just like add like 30% more enemy units, and maybe add like new enemy types, because like the enemy types are really cookie cutter. Like every time there's a shield enemy approaching me, I'm just like, all right, this guy's gonna do literally nothing, and we're going to kill him with magic. It's like, okay, it's gonna take him forever to get over here. He's gonna get two-shot by my mages, and if he hits someone, it'll be for 40 damage. I'm shaking in my boots. Like, it's just so stupid. And then like the big threats, honestly, are like mages and archers, because they can actually hit things. And sometimes things like elite blades can be a threat. But they need more like enemy types. Like there needs to be like spell blades, like, units like Milo that have good mobility, good magic defense, and okay physical defense that actually attack you physically, because everything is like weak to magic that attacks you near you, like that pushes you. So you just kill it all with magic, and then just kind of go to town on the archers. Or the easiest thing to do is just to position yourself well, isolate enemies by groups, and then they can't do anything to you. They'll just mindlessly push into you and die.
Yeah.
I think if they added like more tactics for the enemies to use, it would be a lot better. It'd be way harder. Like if enemies actually looked at what you were doing and were like, oh, they're holding. All right, we'll amass here so that if they push us, they're going to push into more of us. I think that there could be interesting things to do with AI that would make the game harder. Or just add more enemies if it's too hard, too much work.
I agree. I think that this game definitely, as far as like enemy variety, definitely in line with Fire Emblem. As opposed to like, I'm thinking of all the enemies of Final Fantasy Tactics, especially like in game. Like they just started introducing like crazy stuff like Hydras, people that can jump for half the map. You know what I mean? Like just crazy stuff. I would definitely like more enemy variety, and just give me a ninja. Like give me a ninja as a character.
You and attacks you.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, literally, like, give me a ninja to play with, and literally, like, make enemy ninjas or something like that. Just give us a little bit more variety, because, like you said, even as you get further and further into the game, all the unit types are pretty much the same. They kind of bulk them up a little bit as far as their stats and make them a bit more beefier, but you know exactly how to shred these people. You know exactly how to beat them, and that does become a little redundant. And they do try and, like, I think, honestly, if I'm being honest, the mock battles have a bit more variety than some of the maps. Like, 45 through 50, like they actually have some of those like I don't know what they're called, just like special characters, essentially, like the guy with the blue headband, like those type of characters. You don't really run into them with an actual story mode, but I wish they would have, to kind of introduce them. They're kind of hard to beat, but it would be a bit more challenging, especially like in hard mode. I think that they should have introduced some maybe specific character types, enemy types. I think would be cool. I agree with that.
Yeah, the other thing they could have done as well, like for the Roselle, there's like a ton of Roselle bandit enemy types, or just Roselles in general, and you only fight them for one chapter in the story mode. And that's if you try. That doesn't make any sense either. It's like you're like, "Hey guys, can you guys go be slaves?" And they're just like, "No." And they're like, "All right, I guess we'll fight you." And then for whatever reason, the one dude double crosses you, even though he's helping you, and then you have to fight with them, and then you convince them to go be slaves again. It's like, why would that make any? Like if I was Sarah Noah and like Hyzant was like, "Hey, we want those Roselle," I'd be like, "Hey, Jerome, run!" Like if you couldn't fight Hyzant and you had no chance of surviving, you just tell them to run. What are they gonna do? They're like, "Oh, where are the Roselle? They ran away."
Yeah.
Like if you can't fight the army, like why would you tell them to go back into slavery? That's horrible.
Yeah, I thought that option was pretty insane. I was like, you just kind of like this game to do a pretty good job of actually questioning like your ethics and your morality. You know, some things that you might think, oh, you know, it's the lesser of two evils, but it's like, oh, that's still a pretty bad choice. You know, um,
Yeah.
that's why I think Benedict's definitely one of the best Square Enix characters ever created. His utilitarian approach is quite good.
Yeah.
I like it a lot actually, and
Yeah, he's pretty reasonable.
that's actually the end of the list that we have here.
Yeah. Thank you guys for checking this out. So yeah, I guess that's it for this one. If you like this video, definitely check out L.C.'s channel, subscribe to him, check out his content. Definitely like this video and subscribe to me as well if you want. Drop a comment, let us know what you think of the video. And that's it for now. Peace.
Peace.